It was just completely shocking. And I remember being on the harbour, and we had a bar there that we used to run. And there were a few of us. And we had these posters to put up to try and save or to keep Britain in the EU. And I remember somebody picking these posters up and throwing them into the water. The emotional response in the country was to leave. I have never felt so disillusioned, so upset, so uncertain about what the future looked like that morning. You know, and what was interesting was, normally you see France all the time from Folkestone. It's one of the reasons I made my home here, because you could feel part of Europe. And for 2 weeks, it's like somebody pulled France away and you couldn't see it. And this felt like like an omen. I've been living in Folkestone for 20 years now, and I always felt that people were full of possibility and opportunity and positiveness. You know, that was how I engaged in Folkestone and through the projects that we do. And I think for the first time, I also felt distance with people. First 2 weeks after the decision, I started to look at people differently, and I started to judge them. You know, did you vote for or did you vote against? Are you like me or are you not like me? It really called into question people's politics. You know, unity or separation. We are together or we're different. And it really shook me. You know, I'd never seen people like that. I'd never made that judgment about them. And I realised that actually I have responsibility in this, because we just expected it to be okay. We didn't talk to people that might have different opinions to us.
It was an attack on my identity as a European. I've lived my life as if I were a part of a community across Europe. This is the ultimate achievement of Brexit and the people who steered Brexit to make it happen. It's a victory for small-mindedness. It's about being small in the world. It's like individualism against society. Is it better to be an individual? Is it better to be social? Of course we need to be a mix, but the victory for Brexit was to say, no, we want to be more of an individual than we do part of a society. Society doesn't matter as much as we do as an individual. And that's, for me, a step too far. The motivations why people voted to leave are still not clear. I mean, there are very mixed reasons. This is a narrative about power being in Brussels and Westminster being somehow trodden underfoot by the bureaucrats of Europe. We all know that the bureaucrats in Europe have very little power, extremely little power, and they are controlled by the nations. What has happened so far is, first of all, there have been some sources of funding which were just cut off, just finished. The Erasmus program and Creative Partnerships also has finished. When the funding is cut off, it's also a token that the goodwill has been cut off and that there is less incentive or less desire to meet other people and to learn things.
When you work in the cultural field, it's all about being together, it's all about shared experiences, it's all about breaking down barriers and boundaries and seeing not the other but the same. And it just went right across that. For us, overnight, we couldn't send any artists to any of the European partners anymore. So all of our local artists that may have had those opportunities to experience other cultures in Europe, that experience isn't happening anymore. So their minds are not being educated in the way that they would have been educated. If you only know what you know, how can you grow? Whilst culture is not politics, culture is a really important place to be, to try and understand these influences that are working to keep people divided. You know, it's a space with which we can feel safe in. And then all of a sudden someone comes and takes the rug under your feet, and I really had to reframe everything, and it took some time. If we were this far apart, what can we do to come back together? You know, how do we break down those sort of feelings of other? You know, exactly what Magic Carpets is about. The experience of being in different places and hosting people from different countries does hold a mirror up to your own identity, you know. What's the same, what's different, what do I like, what don't I like, where am I making assumptions, where am I not thinking, you know, where am I just reacting, why is their reaction different to mine, why is their rhythm different to mine, people's expectations. It kind of makes you much more open. For politicians to be focusing attention on difference is so dangerous. And we see this now in Europe. And I think Brexit in some ways marks that really clearly. This is something Europe is battling with, the rise of the right wing.
The political mix at this moment is worrying. I go to China very often. I see, you know, most of the world is totalitarian in one way or another. Most of the world is ruled by people who do not allow you to think what you like to think. But the model that we are fed by the ideology, by the neoliberal ideology, is too far the other direction. Because it is totally destructive. What we've seen with the Trump supporters in the United States is the effect of disregarding social claims on the individual. Rank individualism, pioneering individualism, the Wild West individualism is extremely bad for society and is actually, in my view, a form of pathology. It's a mental illness. Humans need other humans to survive, and to deny society in favour of the individual is a sickness. There is a lot of posturing by politicians in order to capture power without any strong programs about what they would do once they had power. It seems to be a desire to have power for itself. Drift to the right, part of is about insecurity, and people can feel another war. You know, there already are wars, and they perhaps can feel a bigger war coming. It's been quite a while since Europe had a war. There have been many, many wars around the world, in the last half century. I fear that it's because of the coming reassertion of the empires of the world over the democracies. It's important, therefore, for the democracies to rearm and strengthen themselves in relation to the coming fight.
It feels like change is here. The town is changing, Europe's changing, Magic Carpets is changing. Maybe there's a big shift coming. Maybe it's time for a big shift.
You mean in a good way or in a bad way?
You need to be naive in some ways to believe you have the power to change things. And it's only really artists and people who work with artists that can suspend reality for long enough to think the thing that they're doing might change the world, or change their community, or change their town. Otherwise, what's the point?